Hi guys, thanks for coming. Yeah, with the guys who are ready for the Halloween party. Give them some round of applause, man. No, joking. Only the foreigners in Bulgaria are ready, you know. So yeah, thanks for coming for the Crypto Meetup number 32. Because of them, we speak in English, but yeah, generally, Bulgaria is becoming a very mixed up place with a lot of people from everywhere. Today is actually also the birthday of Bitcoin, and Voladi will give you some. It's actually anniversary, right? It's 10 years. Yeah, it's 10 years, so it's huge. So what we'll have today is a security tokens presentation by somebody who is via Skype call. Very interesting company called Polymath. You probably heard of it, and I won't give you too much of details before that. But how we're going to do today's event? First of all, we also invited somebody from Founders Institute who they are a startup pre-accelerator, how shall I call it, who actually started a blockchain program. They'll tell a little bit about that. Then Vlad is gonna tell a bit about the blockchain birthday, so he has surprises for you. And then Ivan, who is actually the person who managed to bring Polymath for that presentation. Thanks for that, Ivan. Yeah, a round of applause for him. We'll basically tell a bit of an intro of Polymath, and then we'll hear the speaker as well. So, Vlad, if you want, maybe you can... Oh, no, first you, yeah, of course. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you, Vlad. Thank you, Ivo, for the opportunity. My name is Božidar, and I am one of the co-directors of Founder Institute. Just quick question before I give you 2 slides. Have you heard of Founder Institute? Awesome. How many of you are planning to start a crypto startup? Few? Okay, it's about you. So Founder Institute is the biggest and largest global pre-accelerator. So if you need help to speed up your idea and get traction and get mentorship, maybe we're the right place for you. So we are starting our program on 13th of November this year, and the final deadline to join is 4th of November. So if you're interested to learn more, go to the fi.co/join and apply for the program. It's a very interesting and very intensive program which will help you speed up your startup. Thank you, that's it.
All right, guys.
Every session there will be a mentor who is experienced in blockchain and will be able to give you advice and mentorship on how to build a startup the blockchain way.
All right. Okay. So thank you very much for this introduction, and I have just a few words of few things to mention. Usually I have these presentations where I talk about like the hottest news, but today I decided not to do it so that like the meeting is not that long, and we have a very interesting guest. So what I'm going to do is perhaps I'm going to like do like a video, record a video with the most interesting news that you voted for in the group and share this in the group. Another thing, we actually have a Bitcoin anniversary cake coming up after the presentation, so everybody will be able to grab a piece of that, and also a few other sweets that go with it. Another thing, today we managed in the group to find somebody to translate the actual Bitcoin white paper, which actually has a birthday today. Bitcoin has, you can say that it has 2 birthdays. One is the birthday of when the white paper was published, and the other one is when the Genesis block, so the first block in the Bitcoin network was mined, and that is I think in January, sometime January. So 10-year anniversary, called for something special. We have cake. We will have cake, actually. We will have a cake. And the Bitcoin white paper is going to get translated into Bulgarian. And then finally, if anyone here doesn't have Bitcoins, or even if he does have Bitcoins, you can come to me after the meeting and I'll give you a celebratory 1 lev worth of Bitcoins for the anniversary from my wallet. So this is my this is the short update that I have for you. Exactly, yeah. In 10 years, maybe I've given you apartments. So yeah, remember me. So now I'll give the word to Ivan, who is going to do a short introduction to the talk, and then hopefully we'll get Graham in Skype. There you go.
So yeah, hi, I'm Ivan. I did my best for the past few months to convince them to give us a presentation. So basically, we all know that most of the ICOs that launched 2017, 2018 did a completely useless shitcoin and forced it into their product. And instead of fostering the adoption of their product, that actually hinders it. It slows it down. So it turns out there is a better idea. Just tell me. There is a better way to do that. And Polymath are the guys that came up with the concept. You don't risk jail time. You don't fuck up your user experience, so that's all good. And Graham, can you hear us?
Yeah, so that should be good. Hello, everyone. Hello, hello. Okay, so I'm going to be giving a very short presentation on what is Polymath, and we will go from there. We can do some questions afterwards if you guys want, and I hope you guys enjoy this. So Polymath, the way that I think about it, it is the future of securities. And why it is the future of securities is because Polymath makes it easy. This is client security token. And so let's just have this load here. So this is a very big, what Ivan and crew was talking about earlier was the fact that ERC20 is what created this massive explosion in utility tokens, because there was now a standard that anybody could use so that they could easily create a token on the Ethereum blockchain. And so that's why we saw all of these ICOs, all of these new utility tokens. There's now thousands of cryptocurrencies, and the overwhelming majority of them are actually ERC20 tokens. And the reason why that's the case is because ERC20 made it very easy for anyone to create utility tokens. And what Polymath has come up with is that, okay, so all these utility tokens exist. That's wonderful. There's amazing protocols and new companies that have been born out of this, and that's very cool. But what if we could take this mechanism a step further? What if we could add regulatory compliance to these tokens, and we could allow companies to issue actual financial securities? And so that's what we're trying to do. And that's what we have done. Is we've built a dApp on Ethereum where anyone can come and they can create a compliant security token that has transfer restrictions and compliance built into it, so that people can issue actual financial securities using these things and not be afraid that a government is going to be very upset or a regulator is going to be very upset at them, because these things are actually compliant. And as I alluded to a little bit, here's kind of the difference between security tokens and utility tokens. So a security token is a financial security, so ownership of an asset. So things like stocks, bonds, they could also be derivatives. It could be ownership of real estate, ownership of a private equity fund, any of those types of things where the investors who are buying these security tokens are expecting a profit, similar to pretty much any security you'd be familiar with. And the offerings, when you're selling securities, are regulated. So they require KYC and AML. You may have to be an accredited investor depending on what jurisdiction you're in and what offering is being done. And that's what a security token is. And there's very few examples of those today, but we expect there to be hundreds of thousands of security tokens coming online in the next couple of years. Right now, there's blockchain capital and science that exist. There's a few others. Spice VC is one. And there's a few that have actually been created using Polymath so far. And then over to the other side, utility tokens. So these are things that you'd be more familiar with in the crypto space. So things like Ethereum, 0x, all of those types of things that give you access to a protocol or access to a blockchain. And when you're buying a utility token, you're considered a purchaser, right? You're not an investor in these things. You're purchasing them because you want access to the protocol. And generally when these things are sold, they're done in an unregulated way. So that's the reason why most governments, at least in the Western world, have been fairly upset about ICOs, is because there's no KYC being done on the people buying them. There's no AML policies being put in place. Companies aren't checking whether people are accredited investors or not, so they don't know if they're allowed to buy these things, and the companies aren't registering these sales with the government. So that's why governments are generally unhappy about the sale of utility tokens. And I mean, okay, cool. So that's what a security token is, and that's what a utility token is, but why should we even bother creating security tokens? Why are security tokens better than the traditional model that we have today? And here are some of the reasons. You can have equity where for the first time in history, it's actually programmable. So what are the cool and interesting things you can do with a paper stock certificate? There's nothing. There's nothing interesting at all that you can do with those things. So that's why we've said, okay, what if we took the concept of equity and the concept of ownership and securities and we made them actually programmable in the same way that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and these other cryptocurrencies are programmable. So you can do lots of very interesting and novel things with securities for the first time ever. Additionally, you can raise funds in cryptocurrency very easily. So some of you might be familiar with participating in ICOs. It's quite beautiful how the mechanism works. You just send funds to an address and you receive the tokens that you want in exchange. So that's something really cool that you can do now in the world of securities that you could never do before. You can have markets that are trading 24/7, 365 days a year. To us, it makes absolutely no sense that you can't buy stocks at midnight on a Tuesday night. Like, that makes no sense to us. So with cryptocurrency and with security tokens, you can have markets that are 24/7, 365. There will be a lot of middlemen that are no longer in the equation. Once you have security tokens, there won't be as many transfer agents, there won't be as many lawyers, people in the middle of all these transactions. They will slowly fade away as governments and regulators realize that the technology can now be made to be regulatory compliant from the tech itself, rather than relying from a top-down regulator or lawyer or human being saying, hey, you can't do that. You can now actually code these tokens to behave in such a way where things that aren't supposed to happen cannot happen. And then finally, this is the biggest one, at least for the issuers that are using Polymath, is liquidity. So today, when you have a paper share certificate and you're a private company, it's very, very hard to have a liquidity event. So it's very hard to sell some portion of your company to somebody else. And the reason is that there's lots of people involved in the transaction. And it's very slow. Wire transfers take days, if not weeks, to come through. And what we're saying is if you have global 24/7 markets that are programmable with very few middlemen in them, you will have much more liquidity for these private companies. And so that's why businesses are very, very excited about creating security tokens rather than creating financial securities that are pieces of paper. Security tokens will dominate the blockchain universe. There is no doubt in my mind that this is of everyone else realizing that this is what is actually going to happen. And the reason is just based on the mathematics of how many financial securities and assets exist in the world relative to the amount of the crypto market and the size that it can get to. So let's say, as we saw late last year and early this year, the crypto market got to $1 trillion. There's a quadrillion dollars of financial derivatives. Like, there's hundreds of trillions of dollars of financial securities. There's quadrillions of dollars of real estate that exist in the world. And so the majority of these ownerships of these assets will be represented by security tokens that exist on blockchains. And it's really just a matter of time before people realize that this is a superior form of ownership and financial security, where we get to these numbers where we see security tokens being hundreds of trillions of dollars. And as I alluded to earlier, we kind of see Polymath as the Ethereum for security tokens. So here we have what existed before the ERC20 standard exists, the caps of these utility tokens. So there's Bitcoin, there's Litecoin, and then we see ERC20 come up on the scene, and then the market cap of utility tokens absolutely explodes because it becomes very for anybody to create a token. And so people say, hey, it's really easy for me to do this. I might as well do this. And what we think is going to happen is the exact same thing with security tokens. There were security tokens like Blockchain Capital, Braid, Science, which you saw the logo for before, but there's not really that many security tokens that exist. But once we launched our standard, which we've recently launched, ST20, we're going to see that number absolutely explode in terms of the market cap of all these securities that exist. And ST20 has recently been formalized into an Ethereum request for comment titled ERC 1400. So if you're a developer or if you just want to learn more about what ERC20 is, I highly recommend going and Googling ERC 1400 security token standard. There's been a very big support from the community about this, the Ethereum community, and we're just really excited that we've been able to put this standard forth so that we can generate some more conversation about what needs to be built into this standard so that companies, developers, lawyers, governments, regulators, investors, and all these different parties are excited about this standard and that they want to work on it. And so here it is, ERC 1400. Yay, fun, nice. And here are the first batch of issuers that are likely going to be issuing security tokens using the Polymath protocol and the Polymath dApp. So there's a fund, 7Pass. Coral is a business that provides growth capital to companies. Mint Health is a decentralized health platform. IPWE is the world's first blockchain-enabled patent registry. And Block Estate is a fund that's focused on US real estate. So there's companies from all around the world in all different kinds of businesses that are looking to use Polymath. So it's really a global initiative that we've created. It's not just something that works in the US or in Canada or only Bulgaria or the UK or somewhere else, right? This is something that any company anywhere in the world can use because you can bake into the tokens themselves whatever regulatory compliant features you need. And I highly recommend anybody to go try out the Token Studio and create their own security token. You can do it in about 10 minutes. And you can also do it on testnet. So you can get testnet ETH and testnet Poly so that you aren't spending actual money to use the dApp. So you can do it for free and you can create your own security token. I recently created the Hello token, which was pretty fun. And I highly recommend anybody else who's interested in Ethereum dApps or security tokens or finance or who wants to creating financial securities alike to go try out the dApp. And just a quick update kind of from our team. So we're now a team of 40 people. Our developers are all around the world. So I believe right now we have 2 developers in Toronto, which is where I am right now. And then the rest of our dev team, which is about 15 now, is all around the world. So we like remote with that whatsoever. If there's anybody in the audience watching this thinking, hey, I want to get involved in Polymath, I want to build some really cool stuff. And these are all the places online to go say hi to us. So there's our website, our Reddit, Twitter, Telegram, GitHub. And then there's me as well. If you want to send a direct email to me or you want to tweet at me, please feel free to do so. I love talking to people about this stuff every single day. So please reach out if you have any other questions that you don't want to ask or if you don't get the chance to ask during the meetup. And that is Polymath. We'll come back to me.
All right, so thank you very much for this.
Reading them now. So first question is, according to your best knowledge, which jurisdiction is legally friendly for conducting an STO today? So I would say any jurisdiction where regulators come from new technology, where there's very clear securities laws, would like the best place to issue an STO. So the majority of the companies that we've been talking to are currently in North America. However, we've just seen very recently some STOs with a company, I believe one is in France. There's another one, I believe, in the UK, and there's another couple that will be issuing in Singapore as well as Japan. And so the interesting thing to note about this is people think that the regulations are based on crypto regulations, and I would say that's not really the case. The regulations are just based on whatever securities laws for the last, 50, 100 years in that country, because really the only thing that's changing is the mechanism of what is a security. And so we're going from a world where a security is a piece of paper to a world where a security is a token that exists on a blockchain. So the regulations aren't really changing. It's just a regulator being comfortable with a financial security being represented as a token rather than a piece of paper. And to date, all of our conversations with regulators have been very positive, because I mean, what a regulator cares about is my grandma being ripped up by someone who's raising capital. And what we've shown all the regulators we've spoken with is we are actually improving the way that regulatory compliance is maintained in the marketplace, in capital markets. So because you can build all these transfer restrictions into these tokens, regulators actually look at it and they go, oh, this follows all of the laws that we have. So yeah, we're totally comfortable with it. So we've seen that pretty much all of the jurisdictions we've talked with that have kind of reached out to us, they've all been positive so far in terms of feedback. What is the average cost for legal services or law firms for holding an STO is the next question. So I mean, legal costs vary widely. So I mean, sometimes it might cost a legal firm something like $20,000, maybe $50,000, some $100,000 or $500,000, because what people need to take into account is these are actual financial securities, and issuing financial securities is no really small feat. And that if you are going to issue securities to people, you engage legal counsel and you engage them early. And so, yeah, from, let's say, $20,000 to $500,000, depending on the type of offering, depending on the jurisdiction where you're doing it. It might be different where you guys are. It might be a little bit less expensive if you're doing a private company offering. But expect to pay a few dollars for your legal bills for sure. Next question, can you give some examples of successful STOs that were held with Polymath's help or other STO platforms? So as far as I'm aware, there are no successful, what I would call STOs today, like zero. So that's why we're so excited about building this platform, is because we're going from zero to hundreds of thousands in the next few years, hopefully. I mean, if this thing works out, which I believe it will. Successful tokens that have been created. There have been a few tokens that have been created on the platform. The one that I actually created was for 7Pass. 7Pass was one of the funds that I mentioned on that slide with the 5 issuers. So we created a token for them. They're out raising capital now, talking to investors, getting people excited about their project, but their token is actually created. And it'll be a couple weeks, maybe months, before they start creating their STO and actually allowing people to contribute cryptocurrency into their STO and receiving those tokens in exchange. What is the average percentage of equity that's being tokenized in STOs? Again, that's very wide ranging. Some people are looking to tokenize 5%, some people are looking to tokenize 100% of their cap table. And so it completely depends on the issuer and what they're looking to do. We've seen some very cool things with people who have spoken to us and say, hey, I have a big art collection. I want to take this really expensive piece of art that I have and I want to tokenize 49% of it. And then I want to sell 49% of this piece of art so that I still maintain ownership of it. I can still decide where I want to store it and what I want to do with it. But 49% of it can be chopped up into a million pieces, and then people can purchase a fractionalized ownership interest in this piece of art and participate in the price fluctuation and volatility associated with this piece of art. And so that's a really cool idea that I've seen. But in terms of what percentage, it's completely up to people. And we've seen all different kinds from 1% to 100%. Next question. How does secondary liquidity for STOs look? So exchanges, volumes, evolution in the coming 6 to 12 months. Today there is that is live and actually functioning, and that is Open Finance Network. So we have a very close relationship with Open Finance Network, where what we're doing is ensuring that the standard that we've built and that we've essentially shepherded, and what we've been talking with the community about at ERC 1400, we're making sure that Open Finance's technology on the back end is compatible with ERC 1400. Because ultimately what we want is for anybody to come to Polymath, be able to create a security token, and to then have that security token be compatible with every security token exchange on Earth. And in terms of other security token exchanges, T0 will be live, I would say, in the next 6 months. That's what they are looking at right now. There are a few others. Templum is one that we've been speaking with recently. Hypewell is an exchange out of Canada that we've been speaking closely with as well. In terms of the volumes, I have absolutely no idea. I don't think anybody who has an idea of what the volumes will be like on these exchanges will be correct. I mean, somebody will be correct, but that'll just be sheer luck. There could be hundreds of dollars traded on these exchanges. There could be millions traded on these exchanges in the next 6 months. I think it's really too early to tell. But what we are sure of is that these security token exchanges are very hungry for product. So they want as many security tokens as possible. And so what we're excited about at Polymath is helping these businesses create these security tokens so that they can actually be traded, and so that they can actually be traded in a regulatory compliant way. How much time and money, rough estimate, does an STO take? That completely depends on what type of offering you're doing and to whom you're selling these securities. So, I mean, you could theoretically, if you are, in my opinion, kind of crazy, you could go use Polymath without talking to a lawyer. You could create your security token in 10 minutes. You pay 500 poly to reserve your ticker symbol and create your token. So 250 plus 250 poly, 500 poly. And then you can use one of our audited STO smart contracts for 20,000 poly. So, I mean, you could theoretically, in the next 20 minutes, conduct an STO, and it costs you $6,000 US, roughly, based on the price of poly right now. So, I mean, you could theoretically do that. I don't recommend you do that. I recommend that if you are going to sell financial securities, you speak to a lawyer. So the legal aspect of an STO definitely takes up the most time, and it costs the most amount of money. So your lawyers will probably take anywhere between a couple weeks to 6 months figuring out all of the proper documents that need to be filed, figuring out everything you need to speak with regulators about in order to do an STO. So again, you can do it for very, very cheaply. I still recommend that you speak with a lawyer though. So between, let's say, a couple weeks and 6 months, and anywhere between $6,000 if you're crazy and you don't talk to a lawyer, and hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the complexity of your offering. And last question, based on your experience so far, who are the typical investors in STOs? Private individuals, crypto funds, traditional VCs, or someone else? It's that we've but what we're really excited about are these big funds that are actually interested in getting involved in the STO space. So we've definitely spoken to many private individuals. These are your people you'd think of as being crypto wealthy, or whales, if you want to call them that. So they've made 100x or 1,000x on Bitcoin or Ether or some other token. And they're looking to diversify their assets, and they don't really want to go back to opening up an account at their bank and going through the stock brokerage account. They're excited about new technology. And the companies that are issuing these STOs are generally companies that are more forward thinking, just because they're obviously comfortable with brand new technology. And so these crypto wealthy people are looking at these companies and saying, hey, these companies likely are going to do some very exciting things in the future. So that's where I want to park my money, because I don't know how all that I've invested in, I don't know how that's going to fare over the next 5 years, but I know that if I invest in a company that's buying real estate around the world, I feel like that's a safer bet, and that's what kind of most people are thinking. But yeah, we have seen a lot of interest from crypto funds and from traditional VC funds. But what they are very focused on, custody. So we've actually been working very closely with a company called Prime Trust, who's an SEC qualified custodian, as well as a few other custodians that we're happy to announce very shortly, where these funds, you could think of it, they don't want to have their intern holding onto a ledger and having them drop it in a toilet one day and then they lose $20 million. You know, so what those funds are really focused on is these tokens safely, and are these things regulatory compliant? So they are coming around for sure to the idea of STOs, and there will definitely be some announcements coming soon over the next year or so where you will recognize some names that are investing in STOs for sure. And that's the end of questions. I don't know if there was anything else or anything you guys wanted to go further. Yeah.
Cool. So basically my question is around, I really buy what you guys do in terms of making efficiency against the public markets, because, you know, you have 24 hours buying and selling in these sort of securities. It's much more efficient because it's like everywhere in the world. It doesn't need to go to specific jurisdictions. But what I'm seeing as a problem in security tokens is basically that liquidity actually is more of a bug than a feature, because if you securitize a company at the early stages, pre-product market fit, it creates sort of a lot of possibilities for speculation, which might be detrimental for the company. I really buy the case where basically you can securitize a fund, like a real estate fund or healthcare fund, so you have like a broader sort of exposure to the market, which is great. I think that will work amazingly. But for companies and products, somebody in the audience said art and things like that, you create like a lot of place for speculation, because this fast liquidity and fast sort of buying and selling could really be detrimental for early stage products. What is your take on that?
So is liquidity for early stage startups a problem? I would say in some cases, yes, in some cases, no. I definitely hear what you're saying, right? Like a company that's been in a garage for 3 months shouldn't be able to cash out at a 100 million X price increase or something on their equity when they haven't really built anything. And the company might be distracted because they're in fairly early stages and they shouldn't be thinking about this price of some asset. So, I mean, what the company can do is they can lock up tokens for 6 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. They can actually do any kind of lockup scheme that they decide makes sense for them and that their investors decide makes sense for them. So you could have early investors or supporters of the company be locked up for a couple months, but the founders and the early employees are locked up for 3 years. Right, so you can do any number of different programmatic things to make sure that the incentives of these investors who are buying these securities and the team that's actually working on the company behind it are better aligned. But yeah, I completely understand why. Like you can do an ICO on Wednesday and then by Friday have $100 million and you can just leave the project, right? But so the other interesting thing about security tokens is that these are all governed by all of the same laws that you would be familiar with in the legacy securities world. So if a company does something like that and essentially scam all of their investors, right, like the government's going to go after them, and they have enough legal precedent where they can go after them and be sure that they can actually prosecute them effectively. So yeah, so I'd say sometimes a problem, but you can program these security tokens to be locked up if you want, if that better aligns the team to their investors.
All right, cool. Thank you very much for this. Let me check if there are other questions. Anyone has any more questions? Oh, we have a few. Okay.
Thank you for your presentation, Graham. What I'm wondering about when it comes to security tokens is to what extent investor rights, like say voting rights in a company or dividend rights, are embedded in those tokens, or if the token is just solely an ownership token where everything that comes with it has to be enacted somehow through other mechanisms?
Yeah, so as it works today, the token functions as sort of like a proxy to the paper, think of it like that. So there is a legal document somewhere that says investors in this class of share have dividend rights and they have voting rights, and then the token just functions as a way to represent that. But yeah, what's going to happen in the future is as you can essentially burn all of these rights into the tokens themselves, there will be able to be a place where you essentially burn into the token and say, this token, if somebody owns it, they have dividend rights, they have ownership rights, they have whatever rights given to them by the company. And a lot of that stuff will become more automated, but yeah, today it's still a very analog, manual way of having governance rights as well as dividend rights into the tokens. But how dividend payments work is it's still token based. So if you own one token of Acme Corp and they decide to pay 5-cent dividend, you will receive that dividend based on your ownership of the amount of tokens, and that you can prove you own those tokens. So you essentially say, okay, here you go on Etherscan and you press a call function that pays the dividend to you, and you actually get paid that dividend based on the fact that you own the token. So that stuff is becoming more automated and more on-chain rather than being off-chain. But yeah, hopefully in the future, more of the governance type things will be also on-chain.
Cool. We have another question somewhere here.
So what are the relevant regulations that exist today for security tokens? Oh, okay. Yeah, so I mean, there hasn't been any specific regulations placed forth that talk about security tokens specifically. But I mean, there doesn't have to be in order for them to work. So what regulators are concerned about, this is what I spoke about before, are all of the current existing regulations and laws being followed? And what we've done with the ability to restrict transfers from taking place if they're not supposed to, from restricting individuals who aren't KYC and AML verified, from restricting people who are on OFAC blacklist from holding these securities, from programmatically instating regulatory lockup periods, from programmatically requiring KYC and AML to be redone every 6 months or whatever the case may be based on the offering. Those are the types of things that regulators want to make sure are followed. So a lot of people ask us, like yourself, where is the security tokens are okay stamp from the SEC, right? And that we don't really need that. All you need is to follow all of the existing laws and regulations, which is what we're helping companies do when they create their security token. We're helping companies create a token that can't get in the hands of people who aren't KYC AML verified. We're helping companies create tokens that don't get into the hands of people from an OFAC blacklist. And so all these things that we're enabling, mainly through the restriction of ownership of certain people and at certain times, that's what regulators care about. And that's why so far the feedback from regulators from our talks with them.
Okay, maybe a final question for you.
Yeah, just one follow-up question on that. So there's all these upfront, let's say, hoops to jump through to be able to get a security token. But what happens like on the secondary market? So everyone's talking about liquidity, et cetera, right? So I'm an accredited investor, I buy it, I make 30% in a month, and I go, okay, I'm going to cash in. And then I sell it to you, and you're not accredited. I mean, how does the regulations stop like non-accredited people getting their hands on these tokens in the secondary market?
Yeah, so this is the beautiful thing of what we've created is that how the token works is the token maintains a whitelist. So this whitelist contains every Ethereum wallet address that is allowed to hold the token, along with information about token sale lockup periods, buy lockup periods, as well as a date at which they need to redo their KYC and AML and accreditation status verification. So the way to think about it is, let's say I purchased the token initially. I go through KYC and AML. I speak to the company's KYC provider. I say, hey, I'm Graham. Here's my passport. I'm accredited. Yeah, all that good stuff. And I give them my Ethereum wallet address. And what happens is they add my Ethereum wallet address to the token's whitelist. And so now that whitelist knows that I'm allowed to hold that token after a certain period of time, and I can sell it after a certain period of time. And then if I try at any point to sell that token to you or anybody else who's not on the whitelist, the token calls the whitelist. The token calls up the whitelist and says, hey, is this person allowed to sell the token right now? It says, oh yeah, Graham's allowed to sell the token right now. Okay, cool. Is this person allowed to buy the token right now? The token literally looks for your Ethereum wallet address. It doesn't find it. And it says, no, this transfer is not allowed to occur. The transaction fails. The token cannot move from my Ethereum wallet address to yours. And so that's the way that we're able to maintain regulatory compliance in the primary market as well as the secondary market. Is the token maintains this whitelist that is called upon every single attempt to transfer the token. And if all criteria is met where the transfer can take place, it takes place. But if not all of the criteria that needs to be met is there, then the token transaction literally failed. So in that way, you can maintain regulatory compliance.
All right, great. Thank you, Graham, for this information and for answering all the questions. I think there are no more questions, and we can call this the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Basically now, we have the bridge with this Polymath exchange, and obviously if somebody wants to do some sort of a security token, maybe we can speak to Graham and team and see how to do it best. Is it just a protocol or is it an exchange also? It seems to be a protocol, yeah, so yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much for joining on Halloween and happy Bitcoin anniversary. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, and I guess talk to you later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. I'll have to come visit you guys for the next one.
Yeah, definitely. You're very welcome to come here.
See you, Ivan.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, guys. So we made it. We made it. So the sound quality wasn't amazing. I understood like 85 to 90% of this. So I'm not sure how much you understood, but we're going to share the presentation. We're going to share the links. And if you have any questions, we can, of course, get in touch. Thank you. And actually stay for a while because we have cake and of course one left in Bitcoin for everyone who has a Bitcoin address with him now. So just stay for a while longer.